Let's start. We're very happy that we participate this year in International PANOUSAKI Conference, and I'm going to present you our research paper with the title Differences in Public Debt between South and North Euro Area. It's a collaboration with Stavroula, Konstantinos, SIRIROPOULOS from Department of Business Administration at University of Patras in Greece. So our research question is simple. What is the relationship of growth with the 5 macroeconomic variables? What's the relationship between growth and foreign direct investments, growth with central government debt, growth with gross domestic savings, growth with inflation, and growth with unemployment? So we focus for the period that expands from 1975 to 2016, and we investigate the relationship between the aforementioned 5 macroeconomic variables with the growth, and with the growth we mean the gross domestic product. So our data set consists macroeconomic variables of a sample of 8 European countries as follows: the gross domestic product, investment, central government debt, savings, inflation, and unemployment. So we take 8 euro area countries, considering the Belgium, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain from the euro area. And those selected countries we separated into the 2 clusters, the 2 subgroups, which is very common in economics when we focus on the euro area, into south and north. So the first subgroup is the euro area south countries, which includes the countries such as Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, while the euro area of north countries includes Belgium, France, Germany, and the Netherlands from our dataset countries. The basic equation of the investigation in our study of the debt development nexus is a static no-classical production function augmented with the central government debt stock term, as you can see in equation 1, in which we use the error correction model in order to estimate the coefficients. As for the equation 1, GDP stands for the gross domestic product, FDI corresponds to the foreign direct investment, DBT stands for the central government debt, GDS is the gross domestic savings, INFL is the inflation, and the last one is the unemployment. Also, in our research, we investigate the symmetric Lagrange regression model. As you can see in equation 1, we investigate the asymmetric relationship between the debt and the growth, the gross domestic products, in accordance with the discussion in Sinchol in 2013. In which, once more, we make the assumption that a noticeable and unnoticeable process of our non-stationary and central government debt stock has been distracted into the sum of the debt, which is the constant term, and the debt minus and debt plus. Those 2 terms are partially sum up the values above and below a specific threshold of the debt. In our paper, we use the threshold of 0, so The debt plus represents the positive changes of debt, and the debt minus represents the negative changes in debt. In last equation, in the equation 3, following the examination of the nonlinear model, we estimate the static model with a Polymian approximation of the non-linear function, as you can see. So, we also want to investigate the nonlinear relationship between debt and then growth, the gross domestic product. Table 1 reports the results of the impact of the foreign direct investment of the central government debt, the inflation and the unemployment on gross domestic products of the euro area south countries. Panel A refers to the long-run effects and Panel B refers to the short-run effects. As for the long-run effects and Panel A, we observe that all macroeconomic variables have statistically significant long-run impact on GDP, on gross domestic product. As for the short-run and Panel B, we observe that investments, savings, and unemployment are the variables with the statistically significant short-run impact on the gross domestic product of the euro area south countries. So our results are consistent to the economic theory of Kuhn's law, where the growth rate has a negative relationship with unemployment. In Table 2, Table 2 reports the results on the impact of the foreign direct investment, central government debt, inflation, and unemployment on gross domestic product of the euro area north countries. As before, Panel A and Panel B refers to the long-run and short-run effects respectively. As for the long-run effect in Panel A, we observe that all macroeconomic variables, with an exemption of investment, have a statistically significant long-run impact, long-run effect on gross domestic products of the euro area north countries. As for the short-run effects and Panel B, we observe that savings and unemployment have only the statistically significant short-run impact on gross domestic products, indicating that they have effects on growth of the euro area north countries. In Table 3 reports the asymmetric results of central government debt on gross domestic products for the euro area south countries. We observe that there is statistically no significant long-run impact of negative and positive changes of central government debt on GDP. However, we observe that the positive changes of debt of the central government debt have statistically significant impact of short run on GDP, on gross domestic product. However, we observe the opposite results in euro area north countries. In Table 4, we report the asymmetric results of the central government debt on gross domestic products for the euro area north countries. So in Table 4, we observe as the opposite of the Table 3, we observe that we don't have any short-run effect of positive and negative changes of the debt on the GDP. However, we mention that we have a statistically significant impact of positive changes of central government debt on GDP only in long run effect. in Table 5 reports the nonlinearity result of central government debt of gross domestic product. More specifically, in Table 5 and Panel A, we observe a nonlinearity relationship between central government debt and GDP into Euro area South countries. However, in Table 5 and Panel B, we don't mention any nonlinear relation between the central government debt and the GDP into the Euro area countries. So, to present you the concluding remark, the 5 concluding remarks. First, in the Euro area South countries, our results reveal the existence of negative, both short and long-run relationship between central government debt and unemployment with the gross domestic products in Euro area South countries, and of course a positive relationship, both short and long-run relationship between the foreign direct investments and growth domestic savings with the GDP of the Euro area South countries. Second, the inflation has a negative short-term impact on growth. However, in North Euro area countries, our results reveal a long-run negative relationship between central government debt and unemployment with growth, and a positive relationship between gross domestic savings with a growth, a negative short-run relationship between unemployment with growth, and a positive short-run relationship between gross domestic savings and growth. Fourth, in North Euro area countries, we observe asymmetric effects of central government debt on gross domestic products. And last, we observe a nonlinearity effect of the central government debt on gross domestic products is observed only in Euro area South countries. Thank you. Once again, thank you for your time.